Number 10. Simothua exigua. Simothua exigua, or sea exigua for short. This little critter is literally one of the most terrifying things that reside in our oceans. You may have thought the thumbnail for this video was of a strange fish with teeth in its face, but if you look closely, you will see that the teeth are not teeth at all. The fish actually has its tongue replaced by a terrifying parasite we like to call sea exigua. This parasite works by literally replacing the tongue of whichever fish it infects and then stealing the fish's food. This is the only known parasite currently on our planet that literally replaces the organ of an animal. What's really fascinating is that not only does the organism replace the tongue with its own body, but it then becomes a fully functioning tongue that the fish can use. The fish doesn't even understand what's going on. Sure, the fish gains a tiny bit of weight, but it hardly even notices the parasite living in its mouth. Yikes! To be specific, sea exigua is a type of parasitic isopod. It enters the fish through its gills. Then the parasite uses its claws to cut off the blood supply to the fish's tongue. The lack of circulation will eventually force the tongue to atrophy and fall off on its own. The unfortunate fish is then left with no tongue in its mouth. The parasite replaces the missing tongue, and it then enjoys its new home inside the mouth of the fish, eating whatever food the fish catches. It's actually a pretty decent life for a malicious parasite. Number 9. Johnson's sea cucumber. The Johnson's sea cucumber is certainly one of the creepiest animals in the depths of the big blue. It's difficult to really say what it looks like, other than a bright red sea worm with creepy white spikes growing off of it. It looks like a poisonous underwater caterpillar, but don't let the photos fool you. These creepy crawlies can grow to be around 1.5 feet long, much larger than any caterpillar, and they live in the deepest parts of the ocean abyss. Unlike some other sea cucumbers, swimming for this Johnson is limited. It actually uses its tiny tube feet to move along the dusty floor of the ocean, and the way it eats is rather fascinating. Little bits of fallen food will stick to it as it crawls through the dirt, and then it uses its weird tentacles to stuff all that extra food into its mouth. It's basically a slug vacuum cleaner that moves slowly across the floor of the ocean, picking debris out of the world's deepest and wettest carpet. Number 8. The Spaghetti Monster. You have probably heard of the Spaghetti Monster by now. There are hundreds of interesting people who belong to the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster all across the world, many of them taking their driver's license photos with colanders on their heads. Members of the Church of the Spaghetti Monster can even be ordained to perform wedding ceremonies. And back in 2015, Live Science reported that the actual Spaghetti Monster was found floating across the surface of the ocean floor. There is no mistaking this beast for anything other than an upside-down bowl of spaghetti that has somehow gained intelligence and is now on the prowl in the deepest part of the ocean. But sorry to disappoint you, it's not actually a monster built from spaghetti. That would be cool though. The jellyfish-like creature was discovered swimming off the coast of Angola, videotaped by workers from an oil company about 4,000 feet deep. The creature was eventually identified as a siphonophore, closely related to jellyfish but totally unique. Siphonophores are colonial animals, meaning they are composed of many different multicellular organisms that work together in a giant colony that looks like one mass of spaghetti noodles. I wouldn't try eating one though. Number 7. Supergiant Amphipods. Amphipods are already gross. Supergiant amphipods are even worse. Normal amphipods are just a fraction of an inch long. They are tiny crustaceans that live in the ocean and go about their business in peace. But the supergiant amphipods that were recently discovered north of New Zealand are absolutely enormous, nearly 10 times bigger than their tiny counterparts. And they are super nasty. They look like the ugliest shrimp that has ever been pulled from the ocean. But where they were discovered is really fascinating. Scientists on an expedition pulled 7 of these pale and leggy ocean insects out of the Kermadec Trench, making them the deepest and largest specimens ever found. Very little is known about these huge crustaceans. Supergiant amphipods were first discovered off the coast of Hawaii over 100 years ago. So far as researchers understand, they are husky scavengers that live at the bottom of the ocean, feasting on dead carcasses. It's unclear why there are some amphipods that are just shy of an inch long and the supergiant breeds that are 11 inches long. It's creepy and bizarre. Number 6. The Crimson Jellyfish. The Crimson Jellyfish is by far one of the weirdest and disturbing jellyfish that lives at the depths of our oceans. It's also known as the Atolla jellyfish, and it's an extraordinary creature that has inhabited our planet for at least 500 million years. This jellyfish has no digestive system, no respiratory system, and no circulatory system. It doesn't even have a brain. It just kind of squiggles around and does what jellyfish do best, creep people out. But why is the Crimson Jellyfish on this list of creepiest animals that live in the deep? Probably because of its peculiar and spooky red color. It also lives incredibly deep in the midnight zone of the ocean, nearly 10,000 feet down. There is no sunlight in this area of the ocean, and just wait until you hear about what this jellyfish does when it's threatened. In the absolute blackness of the midnight depths, the jellyfish is able to output a series of bioluminescent blue flares to scare off predators. It basically turns into the blaring red and blue light on top of a police car when something is trying to eat it. Pretty amazing considering it doesn't even have a brain. Number 5. Armoured Searobin. Number 5 on the list is the Armoured Searobin, which kind of looks like a demon spawn. It also looks like it could bite your foot off if you happened to step in front of its face. Luckily, these bizarre sea robins live very deep in the ocean, at around 1,000 feet, and they spend their days crawling along the sandy sea floor eating whatever comes their way. Luckily, these bizarre Searobins live very deep in the ocean. If you think the armoured Searobin looks freaky underwater, you should see it on dry land. Its ghoulish red skin and massive white eyes make it look like it just hatched from an alien cocoon. They use their weird pectoral fins to crawl along the ocean floor, and they have something known as bony scutes all over their bodies that acts as a type of primitive armour. On the underside, close to the mouth, they have a pair of barbels for sniffing out unsuspecting prey. These things are often quite long and elaborate, like the roots of a plant or a bit of a nerve cord waving around in the sea. While not dangerous to humans in the slightest, the armoured Searobin is still a creepy deep-sea animal that I'd rather not have staring at me from my dinner plate. Number 4. Emperor Shrimp. You might say that every shrimp is nightmarish. The next time you take a shrimp ring out of your freezer, just take a look at the weird pink things on your plate. You're basically eating underwater beetles, only weirder. But if I had to choose one weird deep-sea shrimp, it would definitely be the Emperor Shrimp. It's a tiny odd critter, only about 3/4 of an inch in length. But what makes it really unusual is that it's a symbiotic animal. This means that the Emperor usually develops a relationship with another creature, such as a sea cucumber, to increase its chances of survival. The shrimp will then live on the animal, thereby being protected by predators, and it will feast on any parasites that try to take root on the host animal. It's a win-win situation. The shrimp literally spends its life running up and down whichever animal it's occupying, constantly foraging for food on its flesh. Plus, it kind of looks like a wet salamander with too many legs. There are lots of people who keep emperor shrimps as pets in a reef or home aquarium. I think I'll just stick to having dogs, thank you. Number 3. The coffin fish. Most people would say that this fish definitely belongs on this list of creepy ocean dwellers, but there are some who find it sort of cute. Which one are you? The coffin fish belong to a group of deep-sea anglerfishes, like the one in Finding Nemo. They come in several different forms, including the furry coffin fish, the pencil coffin fish, and the red shoe coffin fish. The red shoe looks significantly freakish with its dreadful red eyes, flesh-coloured skin, and horseshoe-shaped head. Most species of coffin fish live pretty deep underwater, at least 6,000 feet below the surface, though some have been found in much shallower waters. They don't grow to be that big, only about 20 centimeters or so. Coffin fish use sensory canals within the prominence line on their head and back to detect movement of any fish nearby. These are ambush predators, who mostly feed on other fishes and crustaceans. They sit and wait patiently, using the nifty fishing rod that grows out of their heads to lure unfortunate fish close to their mouths. When they're not using their lure, they can fold it into a small pit located between their eyes, kind of like putting the broom back in the closet. Coffin fish can be found all around the world on the muddy and rocky ocean floors. Even more strange is that the coffin fish doesn't really swim. It mostly flounders over the sea floor using its stubby arms like broken canoe paddles. There are about 10 species of coffin fish, and each one is creepier than the last. Number 2. The eyeless dolphin. Dolphins are some of the friendliest animals in the ocean. But what about an eyeless dolphin? Nothing is more shocking or even disturbing than the eyeless dolphin that washed up on a Mexican beach. According to the report from The Sun, fishermen who discovered this nightmare creature couldn't even identify it. They claimed it probably came from an extreme depth near the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. The stranded creature looked like a mix between a dolphin and an eel. It had no flippers, no eyes, and a mouth packed with needle teeth. It also had a tail reminiscent of a moray eel. Nobody has seen one of these creatures before, and nobody has seen one since. Are there more of them? Or is this just a poor mutated dolphin? And would it have been as friendly as other dolphins? Scientists don't know what to call it. Some people don't even know if it's real, and you definitely don't want to encounter one of these on your next beach trip to Mexico. Number 1. Translucent Sea Salp. The translucent sea salp looks like a jellyfish that took on the form of an actual fish. It's a totally weird creature that was discovered off the coast of New Zealand by a fisherman. According to the guy who brought the translucent sea salp onto his boat, it felt like jelly and there was nothing to see inside of it in the way of organs except for a small orange blob near what might have been its tail. Suffice to say, the fishermen had no idea what to think. It wasn't until scientists saw the photos that they identified this creepy deep-sea animal. It's known as a salp, and according to the National Marine Aquarium Director, they are found in extremely cold seas, mostly in the Southern Ocean. They move by filtering water through their jelly bodies, and they feed on plankton and other tiny pieces of organic matter. In reality, salps are just another form of strange life that scientists don't know everything about. There are many creepy things floating around in the dark depths of our world, and the translucent sea salp is the perfect example of just how weird, unnatural, and slimy things can get. Number 10. The vampire fish. The vampire fish is without a doubt one of the most horrifying creatures not only in the Amazon rainforest, but also in the entire world, or at least in the rivers of the world. This massive fish, properly known as a payara, makes its home in the Amazon basin. And yes, it has vampire teeth that are large enough and sharp enough to seriously do some damage to someone. If, for some ridiculous reason, one of these vampire fish managed to bite you in the neck, you probably wouldn't make it out of the water alive. Even a bite to your wrist or abdomen could prove fatal. The payara can grow to be 35 pounds and 3 feet long. It has powerful jagged jaws and 2 main teeth that stick out from its lower jaw, which it uses to basically spear its prey. But it has more teeth than that. There are a few smaller fangs in its face that it can use for impaling smaller fish, like Amazon tetras. And if you think any of the photographs you see online of the massive vampire fish are exaggerated, it turns out that their fangs can actually grow to be upwards of 6 inches in length. The photos you've seen are definitely real. Number 9. Killer fungi. One of the freakiest creatures in the Amazon is not a creature at all, but a fungus. This may sound like the plot from a poorly budgeted horror movie, but there is actually a fungus in the Amazon jungle that can turn an insect into a zombie before it kills them. According to a report from the Daily Mail, this is a real parasite that is destroying colonies of ants in the South American rainforest. The fungus works by latching onto a carpenter ant while it scurries across the forest floor. The fungus then grows inside of the ant, consuming its entire body, draining nutrients, and releasing mind control chemicals that alter its behavior. If you've ever seen the movie The Happening with Mark Wahlberg, it's kind of the same idea, but with insects and fungus. Scary! So, what does this parasitic zombie fungus do? It forces the ant to move around in as many areas as possible. The ant will find fresh leaves, it might climb up a tree and then jump off onto the leaves close to the ground, all in an attempt to spread the parasitic fungus as much as possible. The ant is basically a zombie whose only purpose is to infect the entire jungle. After the ant runs around trying to infect everything, the fungus will then force it to cripple itself, eventually resulting in its death. The spores of the fungus then bloom from the ant's head after it dies. Yeah, that is extremely terrifying, and hopefully no mad scientists try to take the fungus to other places in the world, only for it to leak and spread and cause a real-life zombie apocalypse. Number 8. Coral snake. There are lots of scary snakes in the Amazon jungle. Pretty much everywhere you look, there is a snake hidden somewhere in the dense green. And while the anaconda is certainly the biggest and most intimidating, there are actually 9 species of coral snake located throughout Peru and much of the Amazon rainforest that are deadly, awful to look at, and absolutely horrifying. Coral snakes are very distinct. They are yellow, red, and black. They are clearly extremely venomous just by looking at them. Their venom is some of the strongest in the world. A single bite from a coral snake can kill a human in just a few minutes. These snakes can weigh up to 5 pounds and grow to be 3 feet in length. Coral snakes typically eat birds, lizards, and frogs, but they have been known to cannibalize other snakes. And as a side note, it's important to know that when it comes to the red, yellow, and black color scheme, if red touches yellow, the snake is deadly. However, if black touches red, the snake is not deadly. This is always a good thing to know when wandering into the jungle. There is a rhyme that goes, red and yellow can kill a fellow. Red and black, friend of Jack. Number 7. Harpy Eagles. Harpy eagles are some of the most violent looking birds on the planet. The eagles of North America are majestic, and they are certainly deadly, but at least they don't look at all that horrifying. The harpy eagle looks like it's always plotting a gruesome murder. These are the most terrifying birds in the Amazon. They occupy massive territories and feed primarily on medium-sized mammals and other birds. It's the largest raptor in the jungle and one of the biggest eagles on the planet. But despite the harpy eagle's large numbers, they can be difficult to spot. You'll probably never see one, even if you lived in the jungle your whole life. In terms of just how deadly these birds are, they share the very top of the food chain with the two other apex predators of the Amazon, the jaguar and the anaconda. The jaguar is the king of the forest floor, the anaconda is the ruler of the swamps, and the harpy eagle dominates the entire canopy of the Amazon rainforest. Their favourite meals consist of sloths and monkeys. Number 6. Giant fishing spider. Sure, there are plenty of venomous and scary spiders in the Amazon. There's the Goliath bird eater, which is exactly what it sounds like. There's a spider the size of a dog, and there are countless tarantulas. But one of the most overlooked arachnids is the giant fishing spider, which is horrifying in its own way. The spider is huge, growing to be around 1.5 to 4 centimeters, and they eat a diet primarily of fish and other swampy amphibians. You can find these 8-legged freaks waiting by the side of rivers and streams to pounce on unsuspecting prey. They are even able to coat themselves in an air bubble and dive underwater to ambush off-guard fish. The giant fishing spider is able to dive under the water and swim for several minutes at a time until it finds a fish and feels like eating. Imagine going for a dip and coming out with a huge, hairy spider stuck to your chest, and it's holding onto a small fish with its massive fangs. This is a disturbing picture, and not something you want happening. Number 5. The giant leech. Another aquatic freak show of the Amazon jungle is the giant Amazonian leech. Scientists believe it is the largest freshwater leech in the world. It can grow to be almost 20 inches in length with an astounding width of almost 4 inches. That means the leech can be half as long as your arm. They live inside the Amazon River, all the way from Venezuela to the Guianas. And while most people think leeches just hang around in the water waiting to eat people, their main diet consists of caimans, massive anacondas, capybaras, and even cows. Leeches are excellent swimmers and will hang out under rocks in the water while they digest whatever meal they ate. They have no problem sucking onto any life form silly enough to get in the water, including you. If you thought getting out of the water with the fishing spider on you was bad, how loud would you scream if this giant leech was on you and sucking your blood? Number 4. Red-Bellied Piranha. As we recently learned from the last 2 numbers, there are plenty of things in the waters of the Amazon to be scared of. But even before someone arrives in the Amazon jungle, chances are they're already scared of the red-bellied piranha. These fish have one of the most notorious reputations of any animal in the world. But did you know that piranhas are actually important scavengers and a critical part of the Amazon ecosystem? According to the National Zoo, a huge part of their diet consists of fins which they nibble off the larger fish. A typical red-bellied piranha can weigh about 4 pounds and grow to be over 1 foot long, and they travel in large schools. But it's nothing like what you see in the movies. You'll never actually see 500 piranhas devouring a cow in a mad feeding frenzy within just 30 seconds. Usually, there are no more than 20 individual piranhas in a school. They are still vicious predators and they will bite you, but there's absolutely no chance that a small school of 20 piranhas can literally rip the skin from your bones as if you were thrown into a blender. You definitely don't want to be attacked by one, but they aren't quite as horrifying as everyone thinks. Number 3. Lancehead Pit Viper. Pit vipers are not friendly. These are snakes that you should 100% be terrified of. They are what nightmares are made of. And while I could go on and on about how the Amazonian Lancehead Pit Viper has venom poisonous enough to kill a person in minutes, let's talk instead about the deadly Snake Island in Brazil, where hordes of Lancehead Pit Vipers have caused the island to be blocked off from any human contact. It's known as Snake Island, and it's located 90 miles from Sao Paulo. According to just about every news source across the world, it is the deadliest island on the planet, and it earns the title because it has the highest concentration of venomous snakes anywhere in the world. On this island, there is an insane amount of golden lancehead vipers, which are one of the most venomous vipers on the planet. But what's crazy about the island of the snakes is that the lancehead vipers that live here are said to have 3 to 5 times stronger venom than those that live on the mainland in the jungle. A single bite can melt human flesh and leads to death within the hour. There are about 4,000 of these snakes on the island, and it's the only place in the world where golden lancehead vipers are found. But of course, there are still normal lancehead vipers on the mainland. Number 2. Feral pigs. These aren't your normal cute little piggies. Feral pigs are dangerous and should be considered scary by everyone. What's really interesting about feral pigs, also known as javelinas or peccary, is that they live all the way from Arizona to the jungles of the Amazon. You can find them in the jungle, you can find them in Texas, and you can find them all throughout Central America as well. And even though these are a type of pig, they don't look or behave like the pigs you might be thinking of. A perfect example of this is when a man and his dog were attacked by a pack of feral pigs in Arizona. It happened at the top of a mountain, and according to the Phoenix Fire Department, the hiker was forced to call 911 after the feral pigs came out of nowhere and basically tried to eat the man and his dog for breakfast. Sounds more like a pack of hungry wolves than pigs. And even though these feral monsters can be found in Arizona, they do stem from South America. They have very slowly made their way north and are now prevalent throughout most of the Americas. Fun fact, these feral pigs are most closely related to hippopotamuses. Number 1. Vampire bats and disease. The scariest animal by far in the Amazon is the vampire bat. Not only because these bats turn into actual vampires and suck people's blood at night, but because under the right circumstances, vampire bats from the Amazon, specifically from Brazil, could unleash extremely deadly diseases across the globe. A new study has shown that feral pigs, the kind we just spoke about in the last story, have increased in population 5 times since 2007. The population explosion of the pigs has led to a population explosion of vampire bats. More blood to drink, more bats to drink it. This has pushed the possibility of a new infectious disease being born through the vampire bats to a staggering level. This study was published in the journal Frontiers in Ecology and the Environment, and it's a harsh warning. With an exponentially increasing population of vampire bats, the most disease-ridden animals on the planet, there's more possibility that they spread disease to livestock, humans, and even the globe. Number 10. The Striga. Out of all the mythical creatures hidden in the wild, there is nothing quite as frightening as the Striga. This monster is a female demon from Slavic mythology that's a weird mashup between an owl and a vampire. It looks horrifying with its owl face and giant wings, and it is believed to have gotten its origins when a human was born with 2 souls and became a Striga after death. In fact, anyone can become one of these beasts if they are born with 2 hearts. This obviously doesn't happen in real life, but it's definitely a thing in Slavic mythology. The Striga is considered one of the deadliest and most feared creatures in all of Polish folklore. As an owl-human hybrid, they spend most of their time seeking revenge against those who wronged them during life. But they have also been known to attack people at random. As for the chances of the Striga being real, they are pretty much 0. Still, it's cool to think that at one time, the Slavic people of Europe believed there was a vampire-type owl creature prowling the shadows. Number 9. The Alabama Whitethang. Believe it or not, there may be a mythical beast prowling through the thick dark forests of Alabama. It's known as the Alabama Whitethang, and it could actually be real. This is because, since the early 1900s, people have repeatedly reported witnessing a large and tall creature with glowing red eyes and white skin. Others say it resembles a white lion standing on its hind legs. Only, rather than being a big hairy ape like Bigfoot, the creature more resembles a kangaroo with the head of a cat. Most sightings of the Alabama Whitethang have come from within a crude triangle connecting Morgan, Jefferson, and Etowah counties. For this reason, it seems to be a very real possibility that it could exist. These sightings all appear to be relatively similar, with everyone agreeing that the creature is pale and certainly inhuman. The Alabama Whitethang can allegedly move extremely quickly, and it sometimes sounds like a woman screaming. Other witnesses have claimed that the monster has an extremely foul odor that poisons the air around it. An interesting fact is that many people that believe they see Bigfoot have stated that before the sightings, they too smelled an awful odor. There has been no physical evidence taken of this freaky beast, but it very well could be lurking somewhere in Alabama. Number 8. The Fouke Monster. The Fouke Monster is also known as the Boggy Creek Monster, and it's essentially a swampy Bigfoot. This mythical creature allegedly lives in southern Arkansas, with its haunting range being from the small town of Fouke all the way to the Sulphur River bottoms. It has been seen by countless witnesses, including hunters and supposedly even one terrified police officer. In fact, the Boggy Creek Monster is so famous in Arkansas that there was a movie made about it. The creature even found worldwide fame when newspaper accounts went global back in the 1970s, but unfortunately the monster has never been photographed or captured. So far as its appearance, this cryptid is supposed to be 7 feet tall with a weight of between 300 and 500 pounds. Just like Bigfoot, it's covered in black hair and has an ape-like face. The only big difference here is that it lives in the swamps. The first sighting came in 1908, with the last alleged sighting being in 2014. The spooky mythical monster is often mentioned in television documentaries, including Monsters and Mysteries in America, Finding Bigfoot, Mysteries at the Museum, Monster Quest, Lost Tapes, and Weird Travels. Number 7. The Skunk Ape. There is no monster more mythical in the Sunshine State of Florida than the skunk ape. So many people believe in the existence of this strange monster that there is even an official skunk ape research headquarters near Naples in Florida. But what's the deal with this monster? Where did it come from, and what's it doing in Florida? Well, according to a report from CBS Miami, one of the researchers from the skunk ape headquarters claims that the beast is the southernmost relative of the Sasquatch. It's basically Bigfoot's cousin, and it lives in the Florida Everglades. In fact, this same guy insisted there could be at least between 7 to 9 skunk apes currently living in the Everglades. Of course, none of them have ever been properly documented, but people still believe they're living there. The stories of the skunk ape have been circulating for hundreds of years. Even some scientific experts, when asked whether the skunk ape is a myth or reality, simply respond by saying anything is possible in the Everglades. Because this place is so enormous, there could very well be a skunk ape that stands 8 feet tall and weighs roughly 450 pounds, covered in reddish black hair like an orangutan, running around the swamps. Number 6. The Menehune of Hawaii. Let's move away from the continent of North America and check out a mythical race of beings supposedly residing in beautiful Hawaii. They have allegedly been there even before the first settlers arrived from Polynesia. I'm of course talking about the Menehune. So far as the mythology goes, the Menehune were once a race of small and curious beings who had fashioned temples, roads, and so much more on the Hawaiian Islands before humans showed up. The first settlers of Hawaii even recalled there being these structures when they arrived. However, the Menehune only ever came out at night. To compare these ancient beings with something everyone knows, I would say they most closely resemble dwarves. This is because each creature apparently had a special craft that they were skilled in, kind of like how dwarves in mythology could fashion armor and dig for gold. Unfortunately, there have been no skeletal remains of a small race of people ever found on the magical Hawaiian Islands. But that doesn't disprove that they ever existed. In fact, many people believe that this tiny race of humans merely went underground. They could be hiding in the forests or underneath the streets right now as you're watching this video. Could they all have moved to Kauai, as it is the only island that has a vast and dense bush that people are not able to explore fully? Number 5. The Hopkinsville Goblins. Why are aliens often thought to be little green men? Well, this fascinating story might explain it. In the small town of Hopkinsville, Kentucky, a legend of little green men was born. According to History.com, the legend of the Hopkinsville Goblins began on the night of August 21st, 1955. It all started when the family of the Suttons showed up at the local police station with a horrifying story of being besieged by otherworldly beings. There were over a dozen witnesses who apparently saw tiny green goblin creatures about 3.5 feet tall, almost like humanoids but not quite, arrive in their backyard in a spaceship. While this is obviously a crazy story, it was taken seriously at the time. The police chief even told investigators later on that the women, children and men were all hysterical when they arrived at the police station. The police chief also noted that it was strange that the family didn't reach for guns and instead ran for help, meaning they must have been really terrified. Unfortunately, there has never been any concrete evidence that the aliens touched down on the Suttons' farmhouse and terrorized the family, but this is still one of the most credible sightings of extraterrestrial beings that has ever occurred in the United States, simply because of the number of witnesses. And who knows, maybe the Hopkinsville Goblins are still watching from the shadows of the Kentucky forest. Number 4. The Wendigo. Many people believe the Wendigo can still be found today in the remote forests of Canada and the northern United States. While the myth of the Wendigo likely originated with the Native American tribes as a cautionary tale to keep people from cannibalizing each other during particularly harsh winters, the legend still lives today as something that could be real. In fact, the Wendigo cemented its place in history in 1907, when a Canadian man wrote a story about a hunting party that ventured into the backwoods only to be met by the fearsome Wendigo. Between the legend and the story, tales of the Wendigo spread like wildfire through Canada. People became so afraid of this monster that there were even murders that took place by a man who believed he had the ability to detect and defeat the creatures. In Ontario, a man named Jack Fiddler and his brother ended up being arrested and imprisoned for killing a woman who they claimed would have otherwise turned into a Wendigo and terrorized society. So, the real question here is whether the Wendigo is just a myth or a very real being that feasts on the flesh of humans deep in the Canadian wilderness. Number 3. The Pennsylvania Squonk. In Pennsylvania, there is supposedly a monster of myth known as the Squonk. From what we know, tales of the Squonk first started being told in the north of Pennsylvania in the 19th century. The legend was first described professionally in the 1910 book by William Cox, Fearsome Creatures of the Lumberwoods, with a few desert and mountain beasts. But what is the squonk? It's supposed to be the loneliest monster in the world. It has webbing between its toes, only on its left feet, and it can only swim in circles, never back to shore, and it kind of looks like a pig. This creature is apparently always unhappy because of its misfitting skin that is covered in warts. The squonk allegedly cries constantly because of its ugly appearance and can often be tracked by a trail of tears. When it needs to escape a situation, sometimes it even dissolves in its tears. If you're looking to hunt the unsightly squonk, it's reportedly best to do it on a moonlit night. It's not really clear where the squonk came from, but depending on who you ask, it's still roaming through the hemlock trees in Pennsylvania. Luckily, it doesn't seem too dangerous. Number 2. Tahoe Tessie. Next up, we have a creature of myth that allegedly lives in Lake Tahoe. So many sightings of Tahoe Tessie have come to light in recent years that the town is now flooded with tourists trying to get a glimpse of the mythical legend. This is the North American equivalent of the infamous Loch Ness Monster, but with a diabolical twist. The frightful monster was allegedly made by human hands. Some people claim that a secret genetic company used even more secret technology to create a type of new dinosaur from fossilized DNA. Throughout various stages of her growth, Tessie demonstrated warning signs of abandonment issues due to the absence of a maternal figure. She became increasingly aggressive over time. 18 months after her creation, the creature broke free from her enclosure and escaped into the depths of the lake. It was not long after that local authorities were inundated with 911 calls regarding sightings and attacks of a Loch Ness-type monster. Since then, the government has been protecting the animal as part of a massive conspiracy. The government has been calling Tahoe Tessie a mythical creature rather than coming clean with the truth that it's really a genetic experiment. Of course, these claims are all unfounded. There is no evidence of a government cover-up at all, but that's just how the myth goes. Some people even say that the mysterious monster in Lake Tahoe is connected to at least 37 deaths, including an entire family of people who went missing in 2004. Number 1. The Lizard Man of Scape or Swamp. The final terrifying creature on the list for today is the Lizard Man of Scape or Swamp. There have been many theories about the Lizard Man, saying that it's a living dinosaur or even an offshoot of evolution, in which a reptilian species evolved along the same path as early primates. Basically, many people believe there is a legitimate man lizard living in South Carolina, hidden in the forest. The first relatively legit sighting came in 1988 when a man named Davis stopped his car near the border of Scape or Swamp to change a blown-out tyre. When he finished changing the tyre, he heard a noise and turned around to see the Lizard Man running towards him. Davis managed to jump on the roof of his car, swing out of the way, then crawl into the driver's seat and hightail it out of there, but the experience stayed with him for life. Since 1988, there have been sightings all the way up to 2011. A radio station even offered an award of $1 million to anyone who could catch the creature alive, but unfortunately, the actual Lizard Man has never been physically documented. Do you believe any of these mythical monsters are real? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for watching. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button on the way out.